The first time I was accused of stealing, I laughed. It was the kind of nervous, instinctive laugh that slips out when your brain refuses to process something too absurd to be real. But the laughter died quickly, because everyone else in the room wasn't laughing. My name is Julia. I'm 52 years old, and I've worked as a caretaker in the same senior living facility for almost 15 years. It's not glamorous work, but it's honest. I used to say it was my calling. I loved the people, their stories, their quirks, the way time softened some of them and hardened others. I was proud of being the kind of person families trusted with their parents. Maybe that's why the accusation cut so deep. It wasn't just that they thought I'd taken something. It was that they thought I could. The day it happened, the morning light poured into the hall like honey, thick and golden. I remember it vividly because Mrs. Callahan, one of my favorite residents, had asked me to open the blinds wider so she could see the world wake up. I was fluffing her pillows, listening to the soft hum of a radio playing an old Sinatra tune, when my supervisor Denise walked in. Her expression was tight, as though she'd been rehearsing bad news. "Julia, could you come with me for a minute?" she said. I followed her down the hall to the staff room. A few people were standing there, 2 coworkers I'd known for years, and a man from the administrative office holding a clipboard. Denise closed the door behind us, took a breath, and said the words that froze me in place. "Julia, there's been a complaint. Something valuable has gone missing from one of the residents' rooms. Mrs. Porter says her diamond bracelet is gone." I blinked, still holding my clipboard. "And you think I took it?" She avoided my eyes. "We're not saying that. We just need to ask a few questions." But they were saying that. You can tell when people already made up their minds. Their voices get careful. Their smiles disappear. The air thickens with judgment. I stood there while they asked where I'd been, who I'd talked to, whether I'd seen the bracelet. My voice trembled as I answered, my hands cold despite the heater humming in the corner. I knew the routine they'd investigate, keep it quiet, but the gossip would spread faster than truth ever could. By the afternoon, I could feel it. The sideways glances in the hall, the whispers when I walked past, the sudden silence when I entered the break room. I'd seen it happen to others before, rumors that stuck even after the truth came out. But I never thought I'd be the one in their place. That night I sat in my car long after my shift ended, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. I couldn't bring myself to start the engine. The sky was bruised purple and blue rain tapping softly against the windshield. I felt small, like the world had quietly decided I didn't belong in it anymore. When I got home, my daughter Leah noticed immediately. She's 26, sharp-eyed and fiercely loyal. She made me tea, sat me down and listened while I told her everything. "They said there's no proof," I said, trying to steady my voice. "But you should have seen the way they looked at me. Like I was already guilty." Leah frowned. "That's ridiculous, Mom. You've worked there forever. They know you. They should know better." I smiled weakly. People forget what they know when something shiny goes missing. We sat there in silence, the kettle still whistling softly behind us. The next day, things got worse. A memo went out saying all staff lockers would be inspected. I stood there while Denise and the admin guy opened mine. My lunchbox, my book, my spare sweater. That's all I had. When they didn't find anything, they gave each other that awkward nod people give when they realize they might have made a mistake, but don't want to admit it. But the damage was done. Mrs. Porter's daughter had filed an official report, and word reached the families of other residents. Within a week, 3 families requested that I no longer care for their relatives. Denise reassigned me to laundry duty until this blows over. That was her phrase. Blows over. As if my life were just a bit of bad weather, I tried to keep my head down, folding sheets in the humming basement with the faint smell of detergent and loneliness clinging to the air. But inside, something was breaking. I kept replaying the last few days in my head, every moment I might have been near Mrs. Porter's room, every time I smiled at her, every innocent word that could now be twisted. 2 weeks later, just when I thought the humiliation couldn't go deeper, Denise called me again. "Julia, the police want to talk to you." It was as if the floor dropped from under me. A detective came that afternoon, polite but firm. He asked me to recount my movements, my routines, the people I spoke to. I answered every question, my voice hollow. I thought of my father, who used to say, "The truth always defends itself." I used to believe him. But truth, I learned, doesn't speak unless someone's willing to listen. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning through every possibility. Maybe someone had framed me. Maybe Mrs. Porter misplaced it. Maybe it was gone for good, and I'd carry the stain of suspicion forever. Then something unexpected happened. A young janitor named Malik, barely 20, quiet and kind, approached me during lunch the next day. He hesitated, glancing around before whispering, "Ms. Julia, I think I might have seen something." He told me that on the night the bracelet disappeared, he'd been cleaning the East Wing and noticed another nurse, Karen, leaving Mrs. Porter's room. She looked nervous, clutching her bag. Malik thought nothing of it at the time until he overheard her gossiping later about teaching Julia a lesson. My breath caught. Karen and I had argued 2 weeks earlier. She'd made a cruel joke about one of the residents, and I'd reported it. She'd been furious. It made sense now, too much sense. "Why didn't you tell anyone sooner?" I asked. He lowered his eyes. "I was scared. She's close with Denise. I didn't want to get involved." I didn't blame him. Fear makes cowards of good people. That night, I couldn't eat. I kept turning it over in my mind. If Karen really did it, how could I prove it? Everyone believed her. She was charming, always smiling, always volunteering for extra shifts when the cameras didn't reach. Cameras. That thought hit me like lightning. 2 months earlier, management had installed a small security camera near the east hallway, mainly to monitor nighttime visitors. Hardly anyone remembered it was there. The next morning, I asked Denise if I could review the footage from the night the bracelet disappeared. She looked startled. "That's not standard procedure, Julia." "Then make an exception," I said, surprising even myself with the firmness in my tone. "If you really believe in fairness, you'll check." She hesitated, then sighed. "Fine, I'll request access." 3 days later, I got the call. The footage showed Karen entering Mrs. Porter's room around 9:45 p.m., long after visiting hours, long after I'd gone home. She emerged 12 minutes later, adjusting her bag strap and glancing down the hall. When I saw it, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. I wasn't surprised, not really. But seeing it with my own eyes made the betrayal real. Denise called me into her office, her voice softer now. "Julia, we owe you an apology." She explained that Karen had been confronted that she'd confessed. She claimed she only borrowed the bracelet and planned to return it before anyone noticed. It was a lie, of course, but it didn't matter anymore. The truth was out. I thought I'd feel relief. I thought my heart would lift, that I'd finally be able to breathe again. but instead I felt empty, like something precious had been taken from me that no camera could restore. Because even though I was cleared, something in the way people looked at me had changed. Guilt, pity, awkward smiles. No one said it, but I knew they'd all doubted me. And doubt leaves stains no apology can wash away. That evening when I walked down the hall, Mrs. Callahan reached for my hand. "I knew it wasn't you, dear," she said softly. "Good always finds its way back." I smiled, blinking away tears. Maybe she was right, but the experience had left cracks in me I couldn't quite fill. Malik stopped by later, shyly handing me a small note that simply said, "I'm sorry I waited so long." I hugged him. "You were brave enough to speak up when it mattered," I told him. "That's more than most." A week later, Karen was fired. They said it was for misconduct, not theft, to avoid legal trouble. I watched her pack her things in silence. She didn't look at me once. But the part that haunts me still isn't her betrayal. It's how quickly everyone else believed it. How a lifetime of honesty could be undone by one rumor. I stayed at the facility, though I never looked at the place quite the same again. Sometimes when I walk past the east hallway, I glance up at that little camera. The quiet witness. The only thing that didn't lie. They say truth sets you free, but freedom comes with a cost. And mine was learning that people don't remember your innocence, they remember the scandal. Still, I chose to stay, because I refused to let their doubts define me. I wasn't the woman who stole. I was the woman who survived being accused. And maybe that's stronger. Weeks passed before life began to resemble normal again, at least on the surface. My name was cleared, yes, but I could still feel the whispers brushing against me when I walked by, like invisible cobwebs I couldn't shake off. It's funny how people claim to forgive but never quite forget. Once suspicion touches your name, it lingers like a shadow that follows wherever you go. I told myself to move on, to focus on my work, to be grateful that I still had a job. But even gratitude felt hollow. Every time someone mentioned the incident, my chest tightened. Even when Denise assured me that everything was resolved, I could see it in her eyes. Some part of her still questioned me, even with the video proof. And maybe that's what hurt the most, not being accused, but realizing that even after the truth surfaced, trust didn't come back. I'd always believed that integrity could shield you from cruelty, but it doesn't. It only leaves you more exposed when cruelty finds you. My daughter tried to convince me to quit. "Mom, they don't deserve you," Leah said one evening as we sat by the kitchen window watching rain streak down the glass. "You should work somewhere you're appreciated." I shook my head. "If I leave now, it'll look like they were right all along." She sighed, frustrated, but said nothing more. She didn't understand that this job wasn't just a paycheck for me. It was the last thing I had that still gave me purpose. Still, something inside me had changed. I began noticing things I hadn't before, the small injustices that people brushed off, the quiet cruelty hidden behind smiles. And I noticed how easily the powerful were protected, while those of us who worked with our hands and hearts were always the first to be doubted. Then, a month later, another storm hit. One morning I arrived at work to find chaos in the halls. Residents murmured to each other. Staff moved hurriedly, and Denise was barking orders into her phone. When I asked what was going on, she barely looked up. "Mrs. Porter's daughter has filed a lawsuit," she said. "She's claiming negligence and theft again." I froze, but Karen confessed. "You have the footage. She's saying the facility covered it up to protect staff. Apparently, her mother told her that Karen and I worked together to take the bracelet. I felt my stomach drop. That's not true. I know that Denise said, rubbing her temples. But it's complicated. The family's wealthy. They're threatening to go public. The board's involved now. The board. The word alone made my pulse quicken. I'd seen what happened when complaints reached them. Someone always got sacrificed to save the facility's reputation. I could feel it coming. 2 days later, I was suspended pending further review. The letter was sterile, just a few lines typed in Times New Roman. No warmth, no acknowledgement of 15 years of service. Just a reminder that loyalty means nothing when fear enters the room. When I came home, Leah found me sitting on the porch, still holding the letter. My hands trembled as I tried to explain. They said it's temporary, I whispered, but even as I said it, I knew better. Leah sat beside me and wrapped her arm around my shoulders. Mom, this isn't fair. No, I said softly, but it's real. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything again, the footage, the confession, the smug look on Karen's face when she walked out that day. I thought it was over, but she'd left one last wound behind, one that would fester quietly until it bled into my life again. A week passed, then 2, no one called. And then one morning there was a knock on my door. When I opened it, Malik stood there, his expression serious. He held out a flash drive. I thought you should see this, he said. I frowned. What is it? He looked around nervously. Security footage. From the week after the incident. I didn't mean to find it, but I was helping maintenance with some storage cleanup and I saw Karen come back here after she was fired. I stared at him. What? She met with Denise late at night, he said quietly. I don't know what they talked about, but she looked scared. I checked the logs and that meeting was deleted from the system later. My heart pounded. Are you sure? He nodded. Watch it. You'll understand. I closed the door behind him and stared at the tiny drive in my hand. It felt heavier than it should. I plugged it into Leah's laptop and waited for the video to load. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m. The hallway was dimly lit and the angle wasn't perfect, but it was clear enough. Karen walked in first, her face pale and drawn. Denise followed, closing the door behind her. The audio was faint, but I turned up the volume until their voices became clear. Karen's voice trembled. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I just wanted her gone for a while. Denise's tone was cold. You should have thought about that before stealing from a resident. Now the family's threatening to sue and the board wants answers. I'll say whatever you want, Karen said. Just don't tell them you knew I was planning to do it. Silence. Then Denise replied, You think I'm stupid if this comes out? We both go down. You keep quiet and I'll make sure the story dies. My mouth went dry, my vision blurred. They had set me up, both of them. Karen might have stolen the bracelet, but Denise had known all along. She'd let me take the fall, then pretended to clear my name to save herself. I felt sick. Betrayed didn't even begin to cover it. When Leah came home, she found me sitting there, tears streaking my cheeks, the laptop still glowing in front of me. Mom, what happened? I pointed to the screen. They did it, Leah. They used me. Denise and Karen, they both did. Her face hardened. Then you need to show this to the police. I hesitated. And what good will that do? They'll twist it again. They'll say it's taken out of context. People like them always find a way to slip free. Not this time, Leah said. You can't let them bury this. Her conviction reignited something in me, a quiet fire I hadn't felt in months. I'd spent so long shrinking, trying to prove I was innocent. But now I wanted more than vindication. I wanted truth. The next morning I made copies of the footage and sent them anonymously to the board, to the state health department. and to a local journalist who often covered nursing home scandals. I didn't sign my name, I didn't need to. The truth would speak for itself, and it did. Within a week, the story broke. Nursing facility under investigation for evidence tampering and staff corruption. The footage was leaked online, and though my name wasn't mentioned, everyone in town knew who it was about. Denise resigned. Karen disappeared. And the board, desperate to contain the fallout, issued a public apology and reinstated me. But I didn't go back. I couldn't. Forgiveness is not the same as forgetting, and some places carry too many ghosts. Instead, I started something small, an independent home care service with Leah's help. We called it Kind Hands. I only took on a few clients at first, but they were people who wanted to be treated with dignity, not managed by bureaucracy. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace. But sometimes late at night when the house was quiet and the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, I'd think about that little camera. The one that caught Karen. The one that revealed Denise's secret meeting. How strange that a machine, a silent, unfeeling eye, had seen me more clearly than any of the people I trusted. And I wondered how many other Julias were out there. People whose stories would never be recorded. People who would never have proof that they'd been wronged. Maybe that's why I tell mine. Because the truth deserves to be seen even when no one wants to look. For months after the scandal broke, my life became strangely quiet. The phone stopped ringing. My coworkers stopped calling, and the world moved on. But silence has a way of echoing, especially when you've been through hell and survived. Sometimes I'd catch myself listening for the chaos, half expecting another accusation to come crashing through my door. It never did. Yet the fear remained a ghost that refused to leave. Leah once told me, "Mom, it's over now. You won." But what does winning even mean when your name, your dignity, your peace were dragged through the mud? What I lost couldn't be counted in money or apologies. It was something more private, more sacred, the belief that goodness was enough to protect you. And still I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't done. The facility kept operating under new management, trying to scrub away the stain of its scandal. But one afternoon I received a letter. It was from the state's investigative office asking if I'd be willing to provide a formal statement about the events that led to the video leak. I hesitated at first. I wanted to move on. But then I thought of all the quiet workers like me, women who scrub floors, feed the elderly, hold trembling hands while families forget their own parents. We are the invisible ones, the ones they blame first and thank last. Maybe it was time one of us spoke. So I agreed. When I walked into that sterile government office, I felt the same tightness in my chest that I'd felt the day Denise accused me. But this time I wasn't powerless. The investigator, a woman named Teresa with kind eyes and sharp instincts, listened carefully as I told her everything from the first accusation to the moment I saw that footage. She didn't interrupt, didn't doubt me. When I finished, she placed her pen down and said softly, "You realize, Ms. Pierce, this isn't just about you. It's about a system that protects the wrong people." Her words lingered with me long after I left. The investigation grew larger than anyone expected. Turns out Denise had been manipulating records for years, covering up medication errors, altering schedules to hide staff shortages, and pressuring employees to keep quiet. My footage didn't just expose a theft. It cracked open a web of deceit that had been rotting the place from the inside. And then one morning I got another letter. This one wasn't official. It was handwritten. The return address was from a small town 2 hours away. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Julia, you probably hate me and I don't blame you. I deserve it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know I wasn't the only one. Denise made me do it. She said if I didn't plant the bracelet, she'd get me fired for stealing meds. She told me she'd make sure no one would ever hire me again. I panicked. I did what she said. I'm sorry. Karen. I read it 3 times. My hands trembled not from anger but from something else, an unexpected grief. She had ruined me. Yes, but she'd also been trapped like so many others by someone who held power over her. I thought I'd feel triumphant reading her confession. Instead, I felt tired, exhausted by how much pain one person's ambition could cause. When Leah saw me sitting by the window with the letter, she asked, "Are you going to respond?" "No," I said quietly. "Some stories don't need another chapter." But the letter stayed on my desk for weeks. I didn't throw it away. Maybe because part of me needed to believe that remorse still existed in the world. Months turned into a year. Kind hands grew slowly. We didn't have much money, but what we lacked in funds we made up for in heart. Most of my clients were elderly women, lonely, forgotten, sometimes cruel in their confusion, sometimes beautiful in their grace. Each one reminded me of why I'd chosen this work in the first place. Not for money, not for recognition, but for connection, for the quiet dignity of care. Sometimes they'd ask me why I left the old facility. I'd smile and say, because I needed a place where truth mattered. One of my favorite clients was a retired school teacher named Mrs. Henderson. She was in her late 80s, frail but sharp-tongued in the most delightful way. One day, while I was helping her sort through old photo albums, she looked at me and said, "You've got that look, dear, the kind of eyes that have seen something the world wouldn't believe." I laughed softly. "Maybe I have." "Don't lose that," she said. "Pain changes people, but sometimes it changes them into the ones who heal others." Her words settled deep in me. I didn't realize it then, but that was exactly what was happening. Slowly I was healing, not by forgetting the past, but by transforming it, by using what broke me to understand others who were breaking too. And yet just when I thought the past had finally loosened its grip, it found another way back. It was a Tuesday afternoon when the journalist who'd first published my story called me. His voice was animated. "Julia, have you seen the news? The facility director just got sentenced." Sentenced? Yeah, Denise. Fraud, coercion, and evidence tampering. She took plea deals, but she's still facing years in prison. It's over. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The room seemed to tilt around me. When I finally found my voice, all I said was thank you. After I hung up, I sat there staring out the window. The world outside was bright sunlight glinting off the neighbor's car, children's laughter drifting from down the street, but inside I felt a weight lift that I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Justice, when it came, didn't feel triumphant. It felt quiet, heavy, like a door finally closing on a long, dark chapter. That night I lit a candle. For Karen, for Denise, for myself. Not out of forgiveness, but out of release. Because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I whispered into the stillness, "You didn't break me." In the months that followed, something unexpected happened. Families from the old facility began reaching out to me. Some apologized for believing the rumors. Others asked if I'd care for their loved ones privately. My reputation, once shattered, began to rebuild not through words, but through quiet actions. One family at a time. Leah would often say, "Mom, you should tell your story. People need to hear it." So I did. I began speaking at caregiver conferences, community centers, even small churches, anywhere people would listen. I told them about what it feels like to be falsely accused, how betrayal doesn't always come from enemies, and how truth, though, slow never dies. Sometimes afterwards, someone would come up to me with tears in their eyes and whisper, "That happened to me too." And in those moments, I knew it had all meant something, that maybe my pain had a purpose. Then one evening, about 2 years after everything happened, I received a message on Facebook. It was from a name I didn't recognize at first. Karen Blake. My heart skipped. For a moment, I considered deleting it without reading, but curiosity won. "Hi, Julia. I wanted to tell you that I'm in recovery now. I lost everything after what happened, my job, my family, my reputation, but I'm trying to rebuild. I volunteer at a shelter now. I think about you often. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll find peace. Thank you for being braver than I ever was." I stared at the message for a long time. Then slowly I typed back, "Karen, I don't hate you. I hope you heal. We both deserved better than what she made of us." I hit send before I could second guess it, and for the first time in years I felt truly free. The world didn't change overnight, but I did. Now when I look at myself in the mirror, I no longer see the woman who was framed. I see the woman who refused to stay broken, the woman who stood up even when the truth seemed too small to matter. And that's the lesson I tell anyone who listens sometimes. The universe lets you fall apart not to destroy you, but to show you who you are when everything else is stripped away. There's a kind of peace that comes after a storm, not the loud kind, not the triumphant kind, but the quiet one. The kind that settles in your bones when you realize you've already survived the worst thing that could happen to you. That's the peace I live with now. Not perfect, not unbroken, but steady. 3 years have passed since the night that little camera saved me. Kind Hands has grown into something I never imagined it could be. We now have 6 caregivers on our team, all women who had once been overlooked or dismissed by big institutions. Some are single mothers, others are older workers who couldn't find jobs because people thought they'd slowed down. I see myself in each of them, strong, tired but still fighting to be seen. We care for people who need patience more than medicine. Every time I walk into a client's home, I feel the same tenderness that once filled me when I used to work at the facility. Only now there's no fear, no judgment, no one watching for a reason to bring me down. Just the work itself, honest and human. Leah runs the administrative side now. She says I'm terrible with spreadsheets, and she's right. But when it comes to people, their stories, their fragility, that's where I belong. Sometimes I still think about Denise and Karen. I don't hate them anymore, but I haven't forgotten. I don't think forgetting is ever the goal. Forgetting would mean erasing the lesson, and the lesson, painful as it was, changed everything about how I see the world. The truth is, betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from the people who smile while they sharpen the knife. That's what makes it hurt so much. But it's also what makes surviving it a kind of rebirth. A few months ago, I was invited to speak at a state conference for healthcare workers. The organizers said they wanted me to talk about ethics and accountability. I almost declined. I didn't think I had the strength to stand on a stage and relive that part of my life. But Leah convinced me. So there I was, standing in front of a room full of nurses, caregivers, and administrators. The lights were bright, and for a moment I felt small again, like I was back in Denise's office waiting for the next accusation. Then I looked up and saw the faces in the crowd, tired, anxious, hopeful, and something inside me steadied. I told them the truth. I told them how quickly a good name can be destroyed, how fragile trust becomes when fear and gossip rule, how systems built on silence protect the wrong people. And I told them about the camera, the cold mechanical witness that saw me when no one else would. But more than anything, I told them this. You can't build care on fear. You can't lead with lies. And you can't ask people to give their hearts to a job that won't defend them when the world turns cruel. When I finished, the room was silent. Then one woman stood up and started clapping. Then another. Soon the entire room was on their feet. I stood there trembling not out of pride, but out of awe. Because for the first time since all of this began, I felt seen not as a victim, but as someone who had turned her pain into purpose. Afterward, a young nurse approached me. She couldn't have been more than 23. Her voice shook as she said, "I almost quit last year after my supervisor accused me of losing patient medication that had been stolen by someone else. Your story, it made me feel like maybe I can keep going." I reached for her hand. "Keep going," I said. "Don't let them take your truth." That moment reminded me why I survived. Not to prove them wrong, but to make sure no one else had to feel as alone as I did. Life isn't a straight line. Healing isn't either. There are still nights when I wake up from dreams of that day in the staff room. Denise's voice, sharp, the air thick with humiliation. Sometimes I still flinch when I hear the word investigation. But I remind myself that version of me, the one who stood trembling and accused, wasn't weak. She was being tested, and she endured. One Sunday morning as I was preparing breakfast, Leah came into the kitchen holding her phone. "Mom, you're not going to believe this," she said. "The journalist who wrote your story just featured you in a follow-up piece. It's called 'The Woman Who Taught a Camera to Tell the Truth.'" I laughed, shaking my head. "That's dramatic." "Maybe," she said with a grin, "but it's true." Later, when I read the article, I felt something unexpected gratitude. Gratitude for the pain, for the exposure, even for the betrayal, because without them, I might never have discovered who I really was. The journalist wrote, "Sometimes justice arrives not in the courtroom, but in the quiet persistence of those who refuse to be silenced." I clipped that line and taped it above my desk. It reminds me every day why I keep telling my story. A few weeks ago, I drove past the old facility. It looked smaller somehow. The building had a new sign, a fresh coat of paint, and new staff bustling about. But the windows were the same ones I used to stare out of while folding sheets in the laundry room, wondering how much longer I could endure being treated like a criminal. I parked the car for a moment, just watching. Then I smiled and drove away. Not in anger, not in sadness, but in peace. Because I had already taken back everything they'd tried to take from me. I had my name, my purpose, my dignity, and most importantly, I had my truth and proof that it mattered. In the end, that's all any of us really have. The stories we live through and the courage to tell them. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that life will test you in ways you can't imagine. People will doubt you, betray you, and try to define you by their lies. But truth has a strange kind of endurance. It may stumble, it may take time, but it always finds its way home. And when it does, it brings light to the darkest corners, sometimes through people, sometimes through faith, and sometimes through something as small and ordinary as a camera lens. So if you ever find yourself standing alone accused of something you didn't do, remember my story. Remember that silence doesn't mean guilt, and that the truth, no matter how small, has a heartbeat of its own. It will rise eventually. It always does, and when it does, it will save you too. If this story touched your heart, share it so others can hear it too. Leave a comment with your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about resilience, truth, and the strength it takes to start again.